Hello, my name is John DePiro. I'm a volunteer at the Cold War Museum on Vint Hill Station in Warrenton, Virginia. And we'd like to talk a little bit about military liaison missions. At the end of World War II, there was a housekeeping treaty that divided the conquered Germany into sectors and also divided Berlin up into sectors. Now, the American administration had just come out of World War II, which was started by a sneak attack. And so there was a lot of real deep concern on the part of American leadership that we needed to do everything that we could do to try to not be surprised. And so Eisenhower has suggested overflight programs with the Soviets, and none of those came to fruition. But what the Soviets did agree to was to have small teams of people, semi-diplomatic in nature, that could go into the other guy's sector and kind of nose around so that if you were mobilizing your army, that somebody would notice that. So the military liaison missions consisted of 14 men. There were 7 officers who were intelligence officers and 7 enlisted men who were the drivers. And so what would happen is they would take their vehicle and they would go into the other guy's sector and drive around all day to see if indeed the other guy was mobilizing for war. So this turned into a cat and mouse game. So the American driver and his officer would go into the Soviet sector. They drove a car that was like a Kentucky moonshiner. I mean, they would just take off. And in a country with no speed limit on the Autobahn, I mean, takeoff is literally take off. And so they would do 100 miles an hour plus down the road, and they had heavy-duty suspension systems in these cars. They would go across fields, and the idea being to get away from your German, East German, Soviet minders who were following you around and make sure you didn't see anything you were supposed to see. Now, both sides were able to put up signs on places that they consider off limits to the military liaison people. And this is an example of that sign. So if you had a tank park, they would put a sign on the tank park. The vehicles had license plates, special license plates, and that's what these here are. These are actual 2 of the license plates off of Soviet liaison cars. So this was a great game. And anyone who was assigned in Germany during the Cold War, what they did is they gave you cards, wallet cards like this, and so there was all this high attention, high vision stuff about the liaison missions. And as far as I can tell, we never had any attacks ever identified by the liaison missions, but they were sort of fun. Now I had a fella that was a friend of mine who got himself the dream job. He was going to work in Frankfurt with a German national, and they were going to drive a car out into the countryside and negotiate with the mayors and the farmers when field exercises were going to occur so that they would cover the damages and things like that. So what a great job. You get to drive around the German countryside, you get to eat lunch in the gas houses, best job in the world. So he reports for work the first day. And at lunchtime, he's coming out of the officers club, and this guy jumps up, shakes his hand, says, "Oh, Major so-and-so, glad to have you here. You know, how the wife and kids doing?" So they go out in the parking lot, and his friend says, "You know who that is?" He said, "No, that's the chief of the Soviet liaison mission. His job is to follow you around all the time so that they'll know where all the exercises are so they can sneak out and observe them." So suddenly the dream job of the world turned out not to be such a dream job. Now there was one bad thing that happened, and it happened pretty late, and that was Major Anderson. And so what happened is late in the Cold War, he managed to get into a Russian tank park. The guards there were disciplined by going off the side to the work camps. So 2 weeks later, he went into the Soviet sector, and the Soviet guards murdered him. And he is generally considered to be the last casualty of the Cold War. So thank you, Major Anderson, for your service. We're at Vint Hill Station in Warrenton, Virginia. If you want to learn more, come on out, spend a little time with us, we'll have fun.